Hello everyone and welcome to the iSpring Solutions webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today as we are going to speak about how to automate non-learning process with a learning tool. My name is Paulina, I am a community manager, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. And to help us think outside the box and maybe spark your creativity, we have invited David Miles. Hi David, how are you doing?
Hey, great. How are you doing, Paulina?
I'm great, thanks for asking. David has over 27 years of experience in the emergency services industry and is a critical care paramedic. And also, David is a VP of Leadership and Human Resources Development at Cebollero and Associates. And I hope I pronounced it correctly, right, David?
Yes. Yes.
All right, perfect. So if you guys have any questions about Dave's experience with iSpring, you are more than welcome to submit them in the question box. And it should be on the right side of the GoToWebinar panel. And at the end of the webinar, David will be more than happy to address your questions. At this point, I think we're ready to begin. So David, I'm more than happy to pass the mic over to you.
Okay, sounds great.
All right.
Okay, are you able to see my screen okay?
Yes, I can see it.
Fantastic. So for today's webinar, I just want to introduce myself a little bit. Like I said, my name is Dave Miles, VP of Leadership and Human Resource Development at Cebollero Associates. Also the owner of drdaveleadership.com, where we do coaching, consulting, and clinical education. Like Paulina said, a critical care paramedic with about 27 years of experience and a nationally credentialed EMS educator, along with a clinical education background, specializing in improving clinical outcomes. One of our specialty courses is ventilatory management for interfacility transport agencies and quality assurance processes. So let's begin. All right, like I said, a little bit about my background. I have a PhD in organizational leadership with a concentration in human resource development, which is adult learning, coaching and consulting, and organizational development. Like she had mentioned, 27 years in the emergency services industry and the fire and EMS, both field and management. I said nationally credentialed EMS educator, member of the National Speakers Association, a certified executive coach, and have been coordinating clinical training since 1992. And so the purpose of today's webinar, what I wanted to do, we wanted to highlight a process utilizing e-learning tools for automating non-e-learning processes using a case study format. This is something that we were able to talk to Paulina about and work with the iSpring team. And because it was such a unique experience, they were interested in sharing that with all of you all today. So hopefully you can get some great resources out of this. And what we wanted to do is help you better utilize some of the tools that you currently possess. So if you already have, let's say, iSpring Suite or some other type of learning management tool, we wanted to be able to utilize that in ways maybe you hadn't thought of before. Or like I said, have some better questions to evaluate tools that you may be in the market for. And so a little bit about our project. Our project was to automate a portion of the process for an annual respiratory fit testing. Specifically, we were looking at the respiratory assessment questionnaire and a data collection process when it came to that. So I'll give you a little bit of background about that, especially for folks that are non-clinical. So what we're doing this for a medium-sized health system. That health system consists of 6 different hospitals, 1 main campus hospital center, which is a level 2 trauma center, a certified stroke center, an award-winning cardiac center, and has a neonatal ICU. So a pretty robust hospital. Also, that health system contains a community hospital and 4 what they consider critical access hospital, smaller rural hospitals in remote areas. And that system also contains things like retail pharmacies and durable medical equipment and medical transportation and wellness centers and a lot of ancillary surgery centers, a lot of ancillary services that feed into the health system. And so saying that, the occupational health services for the system is currently in the process of bringing all of its respiratory protection fit testing, so to speak, in-house. And for you guys who are not necessarily familiar with what fit testing is, basically, let me tell you about my personal involvement, and I'll tell you a little bit about fit testing in general. So my personal involvement in the project is I was brought in by occupational health and the organizational development department to consult on the project, where I work as a human resource development HRD consultant role with organizational development. And previously, with the health system, I was a full-time manager of education and performance improvement for the health system's EMS and interfacility transport division. And I've had a lot of experience building out courses using various e-learning platforms. Our go-to has always been iSpring Suite. It's so easy to use. That's one of the things I really like about it, just the ease of use. But we do use Lectora, Camtasia, and we have some other tools that we use in building out e-learning platforms. And also for the last 2 years, I had assisted in the creation of the JCO mandated annual mandatory review course for the entire health system, which the health system has approximately 5,600 employees plus several hundred contractors that have to go through this as well. So I was able to take that experience and bring it to this project. So for those of you who aren't necessarily familiar with fit testing, which I had to laugh when I was initially talking with Paulina and some of the iSpring crew, they kind of gave me that, what do you mean by fit testing? So basically, everybody that works in a hospital in a clinical setting has the potential to come in contact with respiratory pathogens, bad stuff in the air that we don't want to get in contact with. For example, TB. Nobody wants to get exposed to something to that effect. So OSHA mandates that the hospital systems provide protection to their employees. Now, there's two types of protection that they can use in the hospital. One is called an N95 mask that you see on the left. One of them is a powered air purifying respirator, or a PAPR, which is the one on the right. Biggest difference is obviously the N95 mask is very convenient. You can just take it and go. Obviously the PAPR, logistically, you see it's a very big system and it has to be charged. The nice part is it completely goes over your head. And so as you can see in the example, you don't have to worry about having a really good seal. It's a positive pressure type of environment where it's constantly forcing air into that hood, and that air is coming out the bottom, so basically nothing bad can get in. So it has its advantages, but also has its disadvantages. Very expensive. There's a lot less of them, and we have to make sure that people are fitted for the proper item, whether it's the mask or the PAPR. Now, saying that, employees have to be tested annually to ensure a proper fit, especially with the N95. That one is particularly susceptible to changes in weight. If you have different cardiac issues, it is a thicker mask, so it makes it kind of tough to breathe through. So one of the things that they're doing here is on either an individual basis on the right or as a group on the left, they're going through the fit testing process where they're using a chemical, when basically the gentleman on the right is reading a paragraph. And as they're doing that, they're seeing whether they can actually taste this chemical in the mask. That's why they have the hood there, to have it a little bit more concentrated. And then if they do taste that, if it's able to get through there, then obviously if the substance is able to get through, then the pathogens are able to get through. So if they have a good seal, they won't be able to taste the substance that they're using to test with, and they know they've got a great seal on their mask and they're able to use it for the next year. But that's something that has to be done annually. So saying that, the health system was bringing in a contractor to conduct their annual fit testing every year. It had some advantages, had some disadvantages. The advantages of having a contractor come in was that it was very convenient. You just write a check, they come in. It was completed all at once. It was annually. It was very easy to plan. There was a 2 to 3 week process that they knew the fit testers were coming in, and kind of to put it mildly, it seemed like they were bringing half the Fifth Army with them. They brought a tremendous amount of resources to the facility at one time to accomplish the task. All of the employees could just show up at any time during those days, didn't have to make an appointment, show up, and there's lots of people to do anything they needed to do. And any contingencies was handled right there at the point of testing. Of course, there's some disadvantages to that too. One, it was very expensive. Two, it was only completed once a year. So if you're an employee who came in, let's just say the month after the annual testing, then you wouldn't be able to get tested for your N95 mask until the very next year, and you would have to use, say, the PAPR device throughout that. And also, the entire health system had to come to one central location. And some of the people that were well over an hour away or lived or maybe even lived farther away than that. So it did make it very inconvenient for some people to have to come to a place that they do not work at. So, like I said, advantages and disadvantages. So what we wanted to do is the health system decided to bring in this process in-house in 2017. And currently they're working through this process now. So this is still an ongoing thing. So some of the advantages of bringing this in-house was, first and foremost, significant cost savings. Also, you can spread out the testing throughout the year. New employees can be fit tested right away during their orientation process, and you can really customize this to meet people's specific needs. Now, of course, the disadvantage is nobody has those kind of resources to devote to such a massive effort. You bring 20, 30 people at once and just be there for the entire 8 or 10 hour time for 5 days a week for 2 weeks in a row is a massive effort. Very expensive, very high in coordination. Also, you need a higher degree of coordination and logistics to be able to do this in-house. And also you need to deal with contingencies and pre-plan, preferably prior to the event, to foster an efficient process. And that's where this really came in, to really kind of deal with issues and realize what resources were needed prior to people coming in and being fit tested. So the process, we realized we needed to capture the following information. We needed to complete a respiratory questionnaire for everybody to determine the employee's eligibility to wear a certain type of respiratory protection, whether they could wear the N95 mask or whether they had to wear this PAPR. We also needed to determine who needed a more detailed respiratory physical, which was conducted by a nurse practitioner prior to the in-person fit testing. For example, if somebody had facial hair, they have a full beard, there's no way that N95 mask could make an efficient seal to be able to, around the skin, to be able to protect you from the respiratory pathogens. So they would automatically be directed, say, for a PAPR. But if you had just other facial hair, maybe a mustache, you could seal around there just fine. But somebody who was trained, for example, this nurse practitioner, had to lay eyes on that to see whether you could actually qualify or not. So some of those things you had to be able to determine at the first. Cardiac issues, respiratory issues, stuff like that, where it may be difficult for you to wear an N95. You need a little bit more detailed physical, and that's what this was. So we had to find a way to capture the information so that the occupational health team could use this to just budget their capital and their human resources. For example, do I need a nurse practitioner at this particular test site or that test site? If I do, how many do I need? Do we have 50 people showing up that all need respiratory physicals? Or do we just have 30 or 40 people showing up and only 1 or 2 people need physicals? Those type of things that you need to find out ahead of time so you're not wasting your resources, trying to make it as efficient as possible. So we had this respiratory questionnaire, and this isn't the actual one. This is just an example of one, and it needed to be completed. And this would determine whether they would be able to use the N95 or PAPR, whether there are any health issues concerning the weather, wearing either of them, or what they needed for a proper fit or proper seal. For example, facial hair question, and then did you gain or lose weight over the last 12 months? It would determine that because the N95 comes in different sizes. So they would need to know, do I need to test you a male maybe a different size for this year than we did last? Things like that. So what we decided to do, we sat down and we developed a process on how we could put this together using e-learning tools. Well, that was the first step. What did we want to do? We really were interested in using our learning management system, mainly because we could send it out and assign it to people. You could track whether they actually accomplish it or not, and you could run reports based on that. But we never really used our learning management system other than, for example, compliance for a memo. We never really used it for stuff that was non-e-learning. The compliance for the memo, for example, that would be a simple one-question quiz that would go out to everybody saying, yes, did I read this and agree to comply to this particular new memo that just went out, yes or no? And it was just a way to record it. But that was about the extent of anything we had done non-learning with our LMS. So what we decided to do is we put it in our LMS system, and we could enroll or assign to the specific people that needed it the online course, so to speak. And the first thing, it would come to a quiz and ask you, did you have a full beard, yes or no? And if you did, that would automatically disqualify you from wearing the N95. You would watch the training video for the PAPR, and that would end the process. Or if you did not have a full beard, you would take that full questionnaire. So the full beard question was extracted from there. And then you would answer, if they answered no to all the questions, I don't have any cardiac issues, respiratory issues. I don't have any problems wearing a mask. I haven't gained or lost weight. Everything is fine. Then the way we set it up is you would pass the quiz. No physical was needed. And then you would go watch the fit test video and then be instructed to enroll in the in-person portion. Now, if you answered yes to any of the questions where you would need to have a nurse practitioner take a look at you, the way we set it up in the background is that you would fail the quiz, and then that would mean that they would need a respiratory physical, and the employee occupational health services would actually get an email to that effect. We set up a designated email. So because what happens in iSpring Quizmaker is we can set it up to where, like for example, in this case, the end user did not even know it was a quiz as a pass-fail type of thing. We took all the pass-fail notifications out of it, and that was only in the background. And so another thing with iSpring is that you're able to actually, on passing, send an email, or on failing, send an email if you wanted to. So on quote unquote failing the quiz, that's why we set it up for a generic email address for this information to go to, so that way they could compile all this data automatically. And then at the very end, we were able to run a report at any time to see who has completed the course and who is still enrolled. And if you were in enrolled status, that meant you had not gone through this process yet. So there were 3 portions to the course, and I put the course in quotes because it really wasn't an e-learning course as much as we had to set it up like a course. And we used PowerPoint and the Quizmaker and the iSpring suite to be able to put this together. So there were 3 portions of it: an introduction, the initial disqualifying quiz, and then the respiratory questionnaire, the remainder of it. So let me show you exactly how we put this together. And this is the Presentation Explorer view of iSpring Suite, where you can actually take and put and rearrange all the slides and kind of have branching scenarios to where if this, then that. So the introduction part is very straightforward. Here's the introduction, here's the purposes of the training, here's a little bit of an overview on what to expect as you go through the training, and then say here's going to our first question. So you have a brief introduction to kind of paint the picture of what people are going to expect in this course, so to speak. So the first one was this disqualifier quiz. And the first disqualifier that we had was basically, do you have a full beard, yes or no? And if you do have a full beard, if you look over here to the right, you have this, where the branching is. Basically, we made it to where you could not go back. Once you hit that question, you could not go back in the course. And if you passed, quote unquote, the quiz, i.e. I do not have a full beard, then you skipped on to this next portion where you would answer the questionnaire. If you failed it, i.e. you do have a full beard, then as you see on here at the bottom right, it would go to slide 7. Slide 7 is, let's watch the PAPR training video, and then thank you for completing the respiratory questionnaire and your annual fit testing requirement, and they're done. Now, if they did pass, i.e. they don't have a full beard, then they got skipped to the next section over here where they would complete the remainder of the questionnaire. So we had, again, set up as a quiz. They could not go back, and then no matter how they answered, whether it was pass or fail, they just kept going in the course. So the only difference in logistically for us was if they quote unquote failed the quiz and they needed a respiratory physical, then occupational health would get an email. So then they go to the fit testing video, and then a little bit of, hey, here's your next steps, and thank you for completing the course, a nice little wrap up. So we had a special note on the videos. One of the things with the videos is that when we brought it, we had a contractor doing this. You would come in, the employee would fill out a form, they would do the questionnaire, somebody would look at the questionnaire and would determine whether they needed a physical or not, just like we talked about. If they did, they sent them to the nurse practitioner. If not, they sent them to a waiting area. And after they got a certain amount of people in the waiting area, they would bring them over 5 or 6 at a time, and they would sit them down in front of a TV and basically make them watch one of these videos, either for the PAPR or more specifically for the N95. Now, with that N95 video, somebody was watching them view the video. So you knew that they actually, as OSHA requires them, to actually see the training. The problem is it takes up a lot of time in an in-person type of environment. So what we decided to do is we decided to push this out. Since this was an e-learning platform, we could not only capture the questionnaire, but we could also make sure they saw the appropriate video before showing up, try to make the process more efficient, less time in person. So what we did is we protected the video with an overlay. One of the reasons we did this is we wanted to make sure that it could not be paused. Well, it could be paused, but you could not fast forward it. You couldn't skip to the video. And we made it to where you had to complete the slide, or i.e. watch the video, before going on to the next slide. And see, this eliminated the idea of having to have a person observe them watching the video. They couldn't complete the course until they finished the slide. They couldn't do the slide until they had the video, and they could not skip through the video. So they had to watch it before going forward. And that kind of ensured the OSHA compliance end of this. So what the results ended up being is, and like I said, this is still ongoing. We're preliminary, and we're still designing the process for a late 2017 rollout. But the first thing is it improves efficiency. Our occupational health services need much, much, much fewer people to conduct the testing, and we can get exactly who we need, where we need. So improved efficiency is the main thing that we were going for and we're coming up with. The second one was improving the coordination and the information gathering. Occupational health now knows who's going to need a respiratory physical exam by the nurse practitioner. And knowing that information, depending on who signs up for which in-person course, or to say course for in-person testing, they can actually assign the proper amount of nurse practitioners that they're going to need to be able to do the amount of physicals for that day. So that's a fantastic thing to be able to have as many as you need, but not too many. And the other thing about bringing this in-house and coordinating all this information is that it improved convenience for the staff. A couple of ways it does that. One, you don't need to send everybody to one central location. I jokingly call it the mothership, the large level 2 trauma center, to do your fit testing. This testing can come to their location. So because it's much more improved and the coordination is a lot easier and it's simpler for them to be able to do this, if they can gather all this information, it's easier for them to take the testing where they need it to be. And then doing that, the employees can either sign up for the location that's close that where they work, or if they happen to drive into a different location, they can sign up for a location for their fit testing that's closer to where they live. And the really nice part about it is because all of this is done ahead of time, it's a lot more convenient for the staff as well, because they don't have to wait in line. They don't have to fill out this respiratory questionnaire there. If they do need a respiratory physical, they can get that handled prior to their appointment, and they can come in for a very short get in, get out appointment to have their in-person fit testing and done. So it eliminates the wait time for them. So it's much more convenient for the staff, much more efficient and convenient for the occupational health services as well. So that's what I have for today. And I put some information on there to make it easy if you have any questions or you wanted to connect. But other than that, that is the process that we went through, and I am more than happy to answer any questions that you guys have. And I will turn this back over to Paulina.
Thank you very much, David. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this session as much as I did. And we do have a very nice comment from Bruce. Very interested in fit testing as a member of the governing body for health and safety for the province of New Brunswick.
Oh, outstanding.
And we do have a question from Nick. You have 2 quizzes in your course. How did you get course completion to be set correctly in LMS with 2 quizzes?
That is a great question. How we did it is this. We were able to choose when we were in the publishing portion at the very end of your iSpring suite, when you go to publish the course, we actually told the when we wrapped it, and of course this is wrapped up in a SCORM formatted package, put it in a zip file, we could tell it to basically only look at quiz number 2. So that way we didn't have to worry about, okay, well, there's quiz 1, quiz 2, or the other way you can do it is actually have it where it's the combination of the quizzes. For example, one thing that we used in an e-learning course, a little off topic, but I think this will help you. We had several quizzes. I believe with our annual mandatory review, we had 3 different quizzes, and we also wanted everybody to be able to view all the slides. We didn't want them to actually go through and just skip all of them. So the way you could have it set up is you could tell it to basically have a combination of the 3 quizzes. So if you wanted to say a 70% pass rate for a separate course, you could have this combined aggregate score of the 3 quizzes had to be 70, and you have to watch, I don't know, let's just say 75% of the slides. You can put, if there's 50 slides, you could say you had to view at least 40 of the 50 slides to be able to get 70% or whatever grade you wanted. So it would actually calculate that whole thing and report that score. And if you set the passing score for 70, for example, it would set that score to the LMS, and then it would report pass fail. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, Nick, if you can let us know if that answers your question, that would be wonderful. All right, the next question from Ryan. David, was there any concerns about keeping the questionnaire secure? Were the answers uploaded to your LMS?
The answer, that's a great question. Thanks. The questions are fairly secure. One of the things is it wasn't like a certification course where we didn't want people to know necessarily what the questions were. So we weren't in a big need to have them secure, but they are fairly secure because the questions are on here, and when you answer them, what would happen is the email that goes to, say, occupational health, that generic email address that we set up, that questionnaire would say, here's the test questions, and here's the ones that they got wrong. And of course, we set it up as either it's 100% to pass or you fail, one of the two. So, and if you fail, that's what generates an email. So the employee themselves doesn't necessarily get an email back with all of the questions on it. Although if you did want the employee, which is really nice about the setup, if you did want the employee to actually get an email, you could just have the pass-fail results, and you didn't have to have question-by-question breakdown. Now, when we sent this directly to the occupational health services, we did have it set up for a question-by-question, so that way we knew exactly. Say if there's 10 questions on the questionnaire, we wanted to know what of these questions, what disqualified them, what made them need a respiratory questionnaire, or a respiratory assessment. And by that, we could look at the results when we pulled up the email, and the question-by-question results would say, okay, well, it was question number 5. They gained or lost weight in the last 12 months. Okay, so you had an idea what was going on. So that only went to exactly who we designated, which was this generic OcHealth email address that we set up specifically to capture this. So there really wasn't, unless somebody got very ambitious and decided to do screen captures of every single question, the questions were relatively secure. So hopefully that helps answer that question as well.
Thanks a lot, David. And we have 2 amazing questions, and let's start with one from Bruce. You mentioned that you forced them to watch the video before advancing in the course or training session. Is this a function of iSpring?
Yes. I believe there are other options and other software packages to do something similar, but what we did is we put an overlay on the course. We actually took basically a text box almost and put over top of it, to the point where they could not access the forward, the backwards. The only thing they could access was the pause button. And of course, in the back end settings, or where we put that you could not go to slide, say, 8 until you finish slide 7, and you had to finish one complete slide before you could go to the next one. And completing the slide meant watching the video. It would be no different than if you narrated your PowerPoints in iSpring, and you could go in there and basically, if each one of them was 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes worth of narration, you could say that you would not allow slides to advance until everything was completed in the slide. So for example, that 2 minutes of narration would have to be completed before it would allow you to advance and click to the next slide. So that's how we kind of did it on this one as well. It was a function of building out the course in iSpring more than it was a function of the learning management system. Our LMS is, we use Halogen, and it's more of a shell. You actually have to have your own AICC or SCORM formatted material that you send up to the LMS, and then that of course, it does a great job on the reporting end of it, but it's not a full function LMS where you have some, for example, a quiz maker built into it, like some of them do, and you can build the course within the LMS. This is one of the ones where you have to have something similar to iSpring, which is why we ended up going with them for the quiz maker specifically. And then for those of us who were doing a lot of e-learning training with the suite, to be able to build out these courses, put it in the SCORM format we needed, and upload it. So yes, this is more of a functionality of the software for this one. So hopefully that answers that question.
Thanks a lot, David. And then there's a great question from Sandra. Hi, David.
Sure.
Thanks for your presentation. I have a question. Did you counsel the participants to get them to take responsibility for their health and watching the video? Since they were at a distance, they could run the video but avoid watching it.
Well, and that's a great question. That's always an option. That's always something you have to worry about. The good part is the videos are relatively short. I think the longest one, which is the N95 one, is about 5 minutes. They do have to physically click the button on the computer to advance the slides. One of the things that you have an option of in I think most of the software packages, I know specifically I can speak to iSpring because I use it so much. You can go in and tell it that once you start the course, it automatically goes from slide to slide to slide, or you could tell it that you have to manually advance it. So yes, there's always the option that even though they can't they can pause it, but they can't skip over the video, they can't fast forward the video. Yes, you always run the risk of them walking away, but for the amount of distribution we're able to get to this, for this being a more of a distributed type of course, you always kind of run that risk, I think, with any e-learning, that's the case, no matter what credentials or certifications you have to go with it, if that makes sense.
Thank you very much. And another question from Peter, and thank you from Sandra. So the question is, how do you ensure that the user of the quiz and the e-learning is the person who should do the qualification? What kind of identification are you carrying out?
That's a great question. The individual, there's two ways this could be assigned to the person. Normally with this type of course, especially for this type of training, this would be assigned out by either two different people, either the training coordinator, designated training coordinator for the individual department, or by this person's manager. Now, if I'm the manager of a nursing unit in the hospital, and I have, let's just say, 50 people that work for me, and I have 40 of them that are clinical and 10 of them that are not, and I know the clinical people have to have it, I can go into the learning management system part of it, into Halogen, and I can check those 40 people and assign it to them as mandatory training. Now, when I do that, I can put a very specific due date on this training. And when I put the due date on the training, then that way I know that, it was assigned to them, when it was assigned, when it was due. And they get a lot of, what am I trying to think of? They get reminder emails. And then, of course, when the training is due, when it's past that due date, it is constantly alerting the manager and the employee that, hey, this isn't done yet. So the kind of the quality assurance portion of making sure the right people get this training is the fact that this training is normally assigned out by the managers to the proper people, versus having you, even though yes, you can go in and sign up for the course on your own, it really doesn't do any good, because unless you're supposed to be getting this fit testing, it'll show up on your transcript that you completed the training, but there's no value in it. I don't think anybody's going to look to say, hey, I have extra time in my day, so let me go do some optional fit training testing online that I don't need to. So I think the manager assigning it out to the individual employees that need the training is the best way for quality assurance on who the proper people get it and who don't. So hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you very much, David. And we did receive one more question from Jerry. Are you planning to work on any other projects with iSpring?
Oh, yes. I can't imagine not using it. Most of the e-training, like, for example, there's a outside of the health system, there's a e-learning course that I do an in-person course for one of my clinical trainings, for example, or or a ventilatory management program. And one of my plans is to take all of that didactic training, the first day of it's a 2-day course, take all the didactic training, put it onto iSpring, and be able to use that through a learning management system. So that way, when say if I go and actually put this course on, I can give the participants, say, access to that course for a full year. So I already have that on, or if I want to send it to them in advance, so they can do that and then do a flip classroom. So they actually have the didactic beforehand, come in, review the material, then just do the hands-on portions. I can do that. So yeah, there's a lot of things that not just on the administrative end like this, but on the e-learning end that I still plan on do with iSpring. So hopefully that answers the question. If there's anything very specific that you have on that, follow up with Paulina, let me know, or ask the question here. I'm definitely happy to help out anywhere that I can as far as setting this kind of stuff up for folks and helping them consult on where they can use iSpring to maybe help their help in their processes. So hopefully that answered that question.
Thanks a lot, David. Thank you very much. And I think these are all questions for today for this session. And I would like to thank all our attendees. There's a question from Brian. Is Dave working at iSpring?
Sure. Well, I don't work for iSpring. No, I don't. Yeah. And I don't work for them. I don't with them. But I tell you what, I will be honest with you. I've worked with their products for the last 4 years. And we have run into some courses that were extraordinarily complex. We had some stuff that I know you're just kidding. No, we had some courses that were extraordinarily complex that I had at the time no idea how we were going to make them happen. And the support folks were fantastic on helping us get this done. But there was some help with this course here because we definitely touched base with support to make sure that this was going. For example, I found out from the help of these guys, you can't, when you're doing your presentation Explorer, you can't skip a quiz. If you have a quiz, you can set it up to dead end the course like we did, but you can't skip over a quiz. Little things like that. But no, they've been over the top fantastic with the support to help us on some massive projects that, especially like this annual mandatory review we did for the whole 5,600 employee health system. We definitely leaned on them for that, and they've been great. So I can't thank them enough. So no, I don't work for them, but they've done some great work for us. So happy to help out. Happy to help out when I can.
Yeah, we just wanted to talk about Dave's case of using iSpring because it's not a standard one. So maybe you guys can use it in your for some of the other tasks besides e-learning as it is. That was the idea.
Yeah, this was definitely a unique application of an e-learning software for something that had nothing to do really with e-learning. When we first set it up, it was just to capture the data. We ended up putting those videos in there just to kind of get more bang for our buck out of, so to speak. But yeah, our initial was just to use this for the straight data collection and the notification of the people who needed this assessment. So definitely a unique way of utilizing the software. Hopefully is something that is a tool for everybody on the webinar that they can use and think about to maybe expand their mind on, hey, this is not just pigeonhole the e-learning software into a e-learning box.
Mm-hmm. Right. And the very last question from today for Jeff, just a quick one. Did you use the iSpring LMS too, or just iSpring authoring?
Just iSpring authoring. We use the Suite version 8, iSpring Suite version 8. We didn't use the LMS. We already had an LMS with the health system, and you'll notice that a lot. A lot of places have their own LMS. So and you have to be specific on which one that you have and how to utilize it. For example, Halogen is what they use, and it's a good product. But it's a shell. And so you have to basically come to the table with an e-learning authoring package that does everything for you. And then what it does is it takes the SCORM format, the zip file, and then it does a great job on the reporting, but it doesn't do anything else. Where some LMSs, you can actually almost build a course in to the LMS and has some authoring capability with it. So this one, we just use the iSpring authoring, not the iSpring LMS.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for sharing, Dave. All right, so I would like to thank again our attendees. Thank you very much for coming today and for asking your questions. Thank you very much, Dave. It's been a pleasure. And thank you
That's,
very much for this wonderful presentation that you shared with iSpringers.
Same here. It's definitely been a pleasure, Polina, and I really appreciate the opportunity. And like I said, if anybody has any questions, they're free to reach out to me after the webinar as well, or they can uh, relay them to you. And I know we're more than happy to pass them along. So thank you
Sure.
again for the opportunity, and hopefully everybody was able to learn something and maybe get some ideas on how they can use their e-learning authoring tools for a little bit more than just e-learning.
Right. Okay, well, I hope that everyone has a wonderful day, and we'll see you at the next webinar. So, bye bye, everyone.
Sounds great. Thanks.